Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Okay, and I just want to see what you're all saying in the chat here. I see Deborah says we don't have a YouTube channel. How to get started, tips and tricks. Excellent. New ideas. That's all great. So, as you all know, this whole AI thing is a thing. I'm sure that you've been hearing about AI all the time. It seems like it is the topic du jour. It is obviously very important. It's something that's real, that's happening, and we need to be on it. Um, and we see that it's changing our behaviors and it's changing search. So this is a semi-rhetorical question. When's the last time you Googled something and actually clicked the link? Um, uh, as you know, when you use Google, you now don't always get links at the beginning. You get an answer. And lots of folks are not just using Google, they're using their ChatGPT or their Claude or other things to do it. So we're in the middle of the beginning of a real behavioral change. And how does this affect organizations? That's what we're going to talk about today. Feel free to raise your hand, talk about your own experience. Please share in the chat. Makes these webinars much more interesting for everybody. I am not, I have some expertise. That's why I'm here. But you all are practitioners. You're doing stuff in the field. It's really interesting to everyone. So if you have experiences you want to share, please share them. So um, we're moving toward this we call it a zero click reality. The idea that search is becoming a dead end in the sense that 60% already of searches are not resulting in clicks. So it used to be that the only thing you do when you went to Google would be to get a list of things and you would click. And now you don't necessarily have to click. And we're seeing very quickly a lot of people aren't clicking. And so the click-through rate on Google stuff drops dramatically when there is an AI answer there, and very few people click on a link within an AI answer. And the part of the challenge here is that people ascribe too much intelligence to our AI, right? Because it has this feel of authority that it does. People seem to just take it for granted that what it's telling you is right. And so they're a lot less likely to continue to search or to read or to do other things once they get an answer. And so um, I'll also mention at the end, if you send me a note, I can make sure that if you want these slides, I'm happy to share the slides as well. So this is really happening. You should be checking your own organic, um, your own search, uh, your own analytics, and really seeing like what's happening on your site. Is this happening to us? Are you getting less traffic from that? But it's true that clearly something is changing. So my name is Michael Hoffman. I am the CEO at Gather Voices. If you scan this QR code, you can connect to me on LinkedIn. That's where I post a lot of stuff and enjoy the conversations with folks about all these kinds of topics. And I would say probably once a quarter, I do one of these with the amazing folks at UST Education. So we really have to change our framework of how we think about search as AI is starting to take over. And, the old model is that search, returned a list of doors and you could decide which of those doors to open. And if you were on the first page of those doors, you might get opened. And your job was to rank and get that click and get somebody to come to your property. The new model is that when you search, you're put in this room that already has an answer in it. And what you want is that your content is the content that is shared. And I think for associations in particular, there's two layers here that are important to think about. One is the layer of um, typical marketing. So you want your association to be named and you want your association to have this authority to be the authority. But also, whatever your issue is in your industry is you want that information to be correct, right? So if you're a dental association and you work on a particular, if you're the endodontists, you don't want misinformation about root canals. You want the information that would come from endodontists to be there. Whether you are mentioned in that or not, you want that information to be the authoritative, the correct information, in addition to doing things that promote your organization. And so I think associations in particular have a vested interest in making sure that these AI models, or doing our best to influence that these AI models are picking up on the right information, the most authoritative information that we can. Um, so, the implications of this is that AI doesn't really need your clicks. And so the old game was we need to rank highly. Where are we ranked on Google searches or, other Google and other search engine searches, mostly Google. And the new game is how do we influence the answer that AI is going to give to people? And so, whether anybody clicks or not, how are we there as a source? How are we there helping to make sure the source is right? And so then we have to think about what does AI actually cite and understand the sources of this. And now I want to put in a caveat here, um, and the caveat is that even the people who build these AI systems don't know everything about how they work, which is really remarkable, right? They're these incredible black boxes that folks are creating and they're thinking and they're trying to figure out why they're thinking the way they're thinking. And so the other thing is that these models are shifting rapidly. The speed at which things are getting better and improving is exponential. And so whatever I'm telling you today might be different tomorrow in some way. And so we have to really think about first principles more than anything, I think, and play a long game rather than dissect stuff too much, right at the moment. And what I mean by that is you can find people online telling you that this is, a very granular way to rank in ChatGPT versus Claude, for example. And while that may have some accuracy to it today, it may be completely inaccurate in a week from now. And so I think we have to understand that our organizations don't move as fast as this stuff's changing. And so we can't pivot day by day in the kinds of content that we create, in the plans that we have. And so we really have to think a bit about big picture, and we have to think more in quarters and 6 months and years and 18 months than we're thinking about in weeks in terms of operationally being able to do these things. So with that in mind, there are three big sources of ongoing data and training data for AI, LLMs, and these models. And one is Wikipedia. Makes a lot of sense, right? Wikipedia is an incredibly comprehensive set of mostly highly vetted articles on lots and lots of subjects. It absolutely makes sense to that AI would want to crawl Wikipedia and learn things from Wikipedia. Reddit is another example. I'd love for you to put in the chat how many of you are on Reddit or use Reddit. Reddit is one of those things that I think has been had its fans forever, but was a bit under the radar for people who don't use Reddit or understand Reddit. But Reddit is a place where there's basically uh, user groups or message boards on every subject you can imagine. And the reason that AI loves Reddit is that Reddit is real human responses, again, on every possible subject. So it's constantly being updated. It's real people doing conversation. So it has the syntax and the tone, and all of the things that AI wants, as well as directly information on lots and lots of subjects. Uh, and then and then there's YouTube. Um, and so YouTube is so I see we have a mix of folks who are not on Reddit, and some people who use it every day. And for the people who are not on Reddit, I highly recommend you just go to Reddit and think of a subject that you're interested in, and not necessarily related to work.
My apologies, everybody. We seem to have lost Michael. I thought it was my own internet connection that was going wrong. We will just sit tight and give him a minute to rejoin the room, okay? He's back.
Sorry about that. I do not know what happened there. Um, Let me get my screen back. Thank you all. Sorry. Um, where did you lose me? We were talking about Reddit, right? And let's see. Um, Let me just get back to sharing my screen. Apologies. That was the strangest little hiccup. Yes, so I was telling you, thank you for letting me know where I was. We were talking about Reddit. If you're not on Reddit, it is absolutely worth getting on Reddit and giving it a try and checking it out. And then there's YouTube. And so YouTube is absolutely the juggernaut of video out there. YouTube is not only the biggest video platform on the internet, it's the biggest video platform on television as well, which is crazy. So more people are watching YouTube than they're watching Netflix or anything else. And so YouTube is incredible, and you can see why AI would love YouTube. There's lots and lots of data on YouTube that is accessible to these AI bots that can crawl it, that can learn, and that can constantly be sucking in updated content. And so when I think about the things that are not on this list are the things that many of the things that we used to do for traditional SEO on the one hand, and also many of the other things that we would do generally in marketing. And so but I also, again, want to caution that I believe these three sources will remain important sources, YouTube in particular, but there will be other sources coming up. There's some data I saw really recently, like in the last week, that talks about LinkedIn as a sort of up and coming source. As more people are posting and writing content and posting videos on LinkedIn, it's becoming more of a source for AI. But right now, these are really three big ones. Okay. And so I think about control, like what can you control? And so as when I ran a marketing agency, folks would come to me and say, we want a Wikipedia page. And I'd say, I'm sorry, you don't really qualify to have a Wikipedia page. And Wikipedia has rules and Wikipedia has editors, and you can try to create a Wikipedia page for yourself, but the likelihood is it'll get taken down if it's not something that's actually appropriate to be on Wikipedia. Reddit is another example of a human-led community where people really have a low tolerance for spam. And so if you go onto a Reddit community and you start talking about yourself and your organization and how great you are, you will get in trouble because people, that's not why people go there. They want real people talking about their real issues, and they don't want people trying to sell them something or hacking or spamming their conversations. So you can do things in Reddit where you really contribute to the community, but that is extremely slow process compared to something you can control, like your own website or blog or your own YouTube channel. And so your YouTube channel is something that you can control. And so what I'm going to talk about for the rest of my time is really how to think about your YouTube channel a bit differently. I think many organizational YouTube channels, many association YouTube channels are the graveyards of, old webinars and uh, event recaps. And so there's actually opportunity there. Uh, and let me know if you lose me again. I don't know what's going on. I just saw I froze for a second. Okay, so what I'd love for you, next question for you in the chat is, do you have a YouTube channel for your organization and what do you use it for? I'm particularly interested in is whether it is something that you keep up with. Is it up to date? Is it something that you are um, keeping up with? And let's see what everybody's talking about. Yes, it's outdated. Not really using it. Um, just lost a podcast. That's great. Nikki says short clips that also post on LinkedIn. Not using it, not maintain, not strategically using it. So it seems like it's a bit mixed, where there are some folks using it and some people just, it's really easy to treat YouTube as kind of a repository where you just, when you have content, you just throw that content up there. But there's no real strategy behind it. And so um, I want to give you some ideas about thinking about a new kind of strategy. So let's just go over YouTube for a second. Um, it is dominating in many ways the citations that we're seeing on AI. And there's sort of two levels to think about AI. One is the ongoing place that AI might find answers to things. And then there's also training data. So training data is stuff that LLM just knows already because it was trained on that content. And then also your ChatGPT or your Claude or your Perplexity can be searching in real time to find new information out. And um, YouTube is important in both regards. It's used as a tremendous amount of training data. So there's a lot of stuff that's being updated in these LLMs from YouTube. And then also it's a source for citations. And, we see that it is the most cited social platform in AI answers. And even you would expect Google's Gemini to be using YouTube because Google owns YouTube, but we're actually seeing all of the different platforms, the different LLMs using YouTube as well. Makes sense. And again, I'm not going to go into the very differences between something that's cited on ChatGPT versus cited on Claude. I really don't think there's very many organizations in our sector who have the bandwidth to create operations that can distinguish between those things. It just doesn't pay. And it's a question of, hey, with a limited amount of effort and resources we have, what are the best things that we can do to help us uh, be in the right place at the right time? So the reason that AI loves YouTube is not because AI is watching all these videos. It's really because AI is grabbing all of this other material that's around your videos. So things like title and description, chapters, playlists, but in particular captions. So transcripts and captions are really the central surface area that the AI is ingesting. Um, so a question, Richard says, does AI flock to these sources because humans point them at these sources? Um, uh, it's really because of the availability of the volume of content and because these sources are seen as authoritative in a certain way. So it's you think about how Google built a massive operation to crawl the entire web or some part of the entire web. That's not what ChatGPT or others are doing, right? They're creating a brain, and they need as big of buckets to pour into that brain as they can. And so the effort to figure out that this corporate website has a little tiny bit of information on it and that it's authoritative is much harder and much more work than saying, okay, let's just pull in everything we can find from a Reddit, a Wikipedia, YouTube, a LinkedIn, these platforms that are already aggregating stuff for us. So I think it's a combination of the fact that these places are really popular, but it's also become really easy for the AI to be able to do that. And this is where things might change, that as they get more sophisticated, as the AI can sort of build itself and do other things, this may shift to some degree, right? They may start to pull in more corporate blogs and more other kinds of things down the road. So I am not suggesting that like we've hit something that's going to stay the way it's going to stay. I don't think so. But I do know that it's not going anywhere, right? YouTube is still going to be influential, even if it at some point isn't number one. So um, So I think the other thing to note is that what AI is mostly citing is not necessarily some of the content that a lot of organizations just stick up on YouTube. AI is often citing things like how-to content, and the kinds of things that are more question and answer. And we know that from search. So if you've done SEO and search marketing work, you will have heard this before, where Google's also thinking about that as well. That things that are how to are going to find more search volume, and so those kinds of articles and those kinds of things are going to be more important to your search results. And so thinking about um, useful, answerable things, and really thinking about what question does this content answer more than just, here's some, B-roll from our event or event recap or something like that. Those are going to be less useful to AI because they're not really going to answer any particular question that it's going to relate that content to. And so let me go to the next slide. So this is the kind of the money quote for this whole webinar, really. And it's to go to your team and say, look, we got to just think about YouTube differently. We've been thinking about YouTube as either as a social network or as a video platform where we are worried about views and going viral and how much engagement there is. And that's why we haven't done YouTube, right? It's hard. And we can't, the guy in their basement doing videos every day is getting more engagement than our organization can get. So we're not even going to play in that sandbox. But now, if you look at YouTube as the world's largest context window for AI, it's completely different, right? It's not about views, it's not about engagement. It's just about, hey, we just like when you start a conversation with Claude and you can, or a project, you can put in your data and your context that it'll read. Well, YouTube is the context for all of it, right? It's for everything that people are going to be doing and searching for. And so you have the ability to affect that wide context window of these LLMs by the content that you put on your YouTube channel. And so that's a really different frame. It's a really different way to think about what do we put there. It's a really different way to think about success and what does success look like? Because again, if you spend a lot of effort on a lot of content and then that content gets no engagement or very few views or things, it's really hard to justify that back to your teams. Like, why are we doing that? But if you're looking at it as, hey, there's this context window, these are the things we want to be experts on. These are the things we want to be cited on. We've got to make sure we've got content in this place that AI wants to look for that content so that we get cited, that we understand that. And so, we're less concerned about the human eyeballs and more concerned about whether the machines are reading this and finding it. And that's, again, it's a huge reframe of what are we doing this for? And it means that your success metrics change. It means that your approach to putting content there changes. And I think that that's really so. Again, of all the takeaways in this session, I would say this is the number one, right? Is that YouTube is playing a different role. How do we think about it differently? So I'm curious, thinking about your own YouTube channels and thinking about this, who on your team, and maybe it's you, but what role is this that sort of owns the YouTube channel and has responsibility for it? And if you're thinking about answering questions or thinking about it in a way that's less about engagement, right, and more about what's our expertise, does that change who needs to be involved in it? Does that change who you need to collaborate with to do this the right way? Um, so it seems marketing, communications owns it. I'm not surprised. Um, and again, I think that if we think about it, where this with this shift of really understanding what do we want to influence, maybe we need to bring in more collaborators. Maybe we need to think about it as not our traditional marketing thing where the marketing team kind of controls all of it, but really thinking about what do we put here that makes sense for us? And I'll get into some of the details of that now. So. What I want to do with our remaining time is to give you a kind of quick start playbook that, and of course, you should personalize this, make it your own. But the idea of like, how do we do this? Where do we start? I want to give you the idea of saying, okay, if YouTube is this AI citation engine, what should we be doing here? Um, so the first thing is, change how you measure success. So the old way is the subscribers, the views, production quality. Those are all things people thought about. Excuse me. The new metrics are really how many of our top questions are getting answered. Do we have this library that's actually covering the things that we want it to cover? Um, do we have different experts in our community that are participating in this? That's another way to create more content and more authoritative content is to have that content coming from the expertise that is your organization. And one of the reasons I love working with associations is because the expertise lives in the membership, right? It's unlike any other industry that there is. If you're the endodontists, the members are the endodontists. That's where the expertise lives. The product, they know more about the members, the customers know more about the product than the organization does. So that's an opportunity to distribute and to collaborate in creating content and understanding what content you're going to get and what those answers are. And so consistency, are you adding to this library regularly? Um, I when I ran a marketing agency in Chicago, I got calls all the time from people asking, they want a viral video. And so um, it really changes the thinking of what this is about and what we're trying to do and what we do it for. And this is something that's actually a lot easier to control, right? We don't, we always said to folks who asked for a viral video was, you know, the lightning in a bottle that is viral is a hard to predict, hard to manufacture, and B, the most viral things will get audiences that you have nothing to do with and you don't even care about. So those numbers are vanity metrics of views. And I think YouTube did us all a terrible disservice when we think of it as natural now, but when you go to YouTube and the like biggest thing sitting there is the view count, that was a choice that they made at the beginning that I feel like really skewed how we think about what content we create. Because in the end, it's not even when it was about views, it wasn't about all views. It was about specific views to the people that you were trying to attract, not any views. And today, I think thinking about it from this AI perspective, again, it's more about coverage and consistency than it is about that that viral moment. Okay, so where to start then is questions. I think 20 questions is a great thing to start. And this is a great collaborative thing to do in your team. Imagine those of you who've used Reddit know that you can upvote comments in Reddit. So people write a post, and if that post is interesting, people upvote it, and that post shows up at the top. It'd be an interesting thing to do with questions. So to say, well, what is our audience asking? What are our members? What are prospective members? What are members of the public who care about our profession or our trade? What are they asking? And figure out like what do we think those top 20 questions are? And we can ask people on the front lines. We can look and see what Google is suggesting that people are asking. We can look at the questions people send us and understand it. And if you were to crowdsource that a bit internally, would everybody agree that these are the questions? And what other questions would people come up with? And these questions then can become your roadmap to developing your new and improved YouTube channel. And for those of you who are already using your YouTube channel and already effective at using your YouTube channel, it can play both roles. YouTube can be this context window for AI. And if you have a really active channel and a podcast and other things where you have subscribers and you have views and you have engagement, don't stop doing that. That is certainly very valuable as well. And so if you're not using YouTube at all, you can use it for this. If you're using YouTube the traditional way, you can also use it for this. These things can coexist together. That's why you have things like playlists that allow you to segregate different content into groupings. And you can do the same here. So I'd love for you all to share some questions. So when you think about those questions that people are asking, the prospective members, let's say, are asking, or that a member of the public is asking about your profession or your expertise, what are they? So just throw a couple questions. I'd love to just get a sampling from you all of some of those questions. So Kenneth says an audit of website content can help with those 20 questions. Yeah, I agree with that too. It's like, where are people going? What's the track that people are taking on your website currently? What are the most looked at articles and things like that? That's a really great input, I think, for those questions. Um, Erica says, how do we implement AI safely? That's a really good question. And you could create quite a lot of content about that, right? Because uh, the answer to that depends on what kind of AI you're implementing for what purpose right? And there's probably high level overviews of that question, and there's probably very detailed, granular things that focus that question as well. What else? What else is one of your all questions that you have? Please share in the chat. Um, it's interesting. AI is one of those things that there's very few associations that AI is their thing, but AI is affecting all of our things, right? It's affecting every organization, probably every medical professional, every trade is wondering what role is AI playing in our area, in our trade. So that's a really hot topic that makes a lot of sense, I think, is probably true across every type of organization. Controlling insurance costs, great one. Meredith says how best to advocate for the profession. Also really good. So these are great. Permitting requirements. Yeah, that's like exactly the kind of detailed data that AI would love. A toxicologist, what's a toxicologist? Yeah, great, great stuff. How do I become a toxicologist? Really good. And um, yeah, really interesting questions. Love it. Okay. Or quite into some pillars. And these are just suggestions of pillars, but you can have other pillars. So how-to questions, how do I do this? How do I do that? What do I do if I have a pain in my tooth? Questions, problems, questions, and watch outs, cost related questions, the advocacy and thought leadership and insider perspective questions. So these are just some frameworks that you can have, and you may have these questions. This is also where AI can help you. If you have 20 questions and you put those 20 questions into AI, you can also ask, Claude and say, if I were to group these into four content pillars, what would be a natural way to do that? AI can obviously help you with these things as well. But don't rely on AI to come up with those questions, right? Because we want to find out what the real people in our community are thinking. Um, so the idea is to create pillars because pillars become playlists, and playlists are ways to organize content into groups, and playlists are also something that the AI engines are looking at and going, oh, this is a topic, and there's a set of things within this topic. And so that becomes more metadata that helps discoverability of the things within that playlist. It also helps you keep your YouTube channel organized. So somebody goes to your YouTube channel and it's not a big mess of random stuff all mixed together. It's a set of logical playlists that make sense that a human could actually navigate. And so it plays both of those roles. Okay. And then the third piece is to make every AI, every video readable to AI. So making sure that your title is good. Ideally, if it can be a question, that's a great way to do it. To make sure your description is a structured summary, to make sure if your video is longer than a few minutes, to make sure it's got chapters in it, to make sure the transcript is accurate. So we know auto transcription has gone a long way. It is much more accurate than it used to be, but especially if you have scientific or medical terms or other things like that, it can get those wrong. So make sure that that's something that you uh, are paying attention to and fixing in those automatic transcripts. And then again, making sure things are in uh, the right placement. And again, remember, this is not about production value. It's not about subscriber count. It's not about video length either. It's about, are we answering the kinds of questions that people are going to be searching for? Okay. So um, there are lots of tools. So that QR code goes to what I work on, which is Gathered Voices, if you want to learn more about that. But the idea here is, in general, is whatever tools you use, you don't have to be using professional production for all this content. You can be using your iPhone, you can be using your webcam, you can be doing things in your own office. So you shouldn't let the lack of expertise or vendors or other things get in your way. No matter what, you absolutely can do this. And when you create content, you have to then, think of it more like a librarian. And, one of the things that you can do is also go out to your membership and create more member engagement around creating this content. So instead of just saying, oh, my marketing team now has to create 20 videos for our first 20 questions, um, uh, we what you can do is say, well, who in our community, who among our members is an expert in those areas, and can we get them to share their expertise and put that online as a video? And so, the exciting thing about the tools that exist today, that again, our phones, our webcams, and your community, is that you can distribute the work of this content among your staff and among your members in a way that just wasn't possible before. And so thinking about it like a librarian, thinking about consistency and thinking about more this mental model shift of saying we need to have a regular cadence of doing this versus we're going to spend lots of money and a short period of time to create, some tentpole piece of content. That's not what we're doing here. We're really saying, let's prioritize our questions. Let's think about what we already have. So this is another piece. Lots of organizations have lots of content from your conferences, from taped webinars, from other things. Some of that may fit perfectly in one of these questions, but often there's a question inside of that content. And so it is often easier to cut up that hour-long webinar to answer 3 or 4 questions than it is to create new content around that. So doing kind of an inventory of what you have is another way to get to do a quick start here. So you're thinking about this not as a social media feed the beast type of thing, but more as a compounding asset. This stuff is this question about a root canal is not going to change anytime soon. It can live online. It can be an evergreen asset that's living there. That's actually the gift that keeps on giving. Erica asked, "What's the ideal length for these answers?" Um, the ideal length is, um, there's a famous saying in the video world that your video should be as long as it needs to be, but no longer than that. And that's kind of what we think about it. So if it's something that can be answered in a quick short video, then do that. But your AI engine has more tolerance for length than the human viewer does. So if you want something to play 2 roles, to be able to really create engagement, and that's part of what you're doing, you're going to want to err on the side of shorter. But also, if you have a longer video, you might go, oh, this lives nicely as a long video on this topic, but this first part of it is actually a sub part of that we can turn into its own piece. So that's how I would be thinking about it, is can this shorter piece live on its own? And it's absolutely fine. I think it's good to have multiple videos that answer the same question or aspects of the same question. Absolutely. So you could have experts in your community answering the same question a little bit differently from their own point of view, right? So if you said, like I keep going back to endodontists for some reason. If you ask different endodontists about when should somebody call an endodontist, you might get very different answers to that all complement each other, right? And that would be an amazing playlist, listening to endodontists talk about when you should call an endodontist. And again, those things will get, so you can imagine asking AI, when should I call the endodontist? And it's pulling those answers from those endodontists, and it's giving you one of these sort of structured responses. Like that's a great way to do it. I wouldn't just copy the same video over and over again, right? So if the perspective is a little different, if the framing's a little different, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so 30-day quick start. Um, really simple here. I'm just taking what I talked to you about and just saying, like, put a calendar on it and see what you can do. Start with getting your questions. Start asking your team what those questions are, start getting some consensus around it. And maybe there's only consensus around the first five of those initially. Hey, we all know these are like the big questions everybody's asking. We've got to have content around that. Checking out your channel. So if you don't have a channel, setting it up. If you haven't maintained your channel, it may be redoing the description, cleaning it up, organizing things in playlists, getting rid of some old things that are irrelevant, or putting them into playlists so that they're not mucking up your channel, and cleaning that up. Week 3, publish some videos. Make sure that those descriptions are right, that the chapters and titles and transcripts are all there. And then, another thing that I would recommend is to test, to start going to these different AI tools and start asking it questions and seeing if what's showing up in those answers. And I think, one of the things we know about using AI is that you ask it the same question every time you ask it, it's going to give you a bit of a different answer, right? It's not the same set of results all the time. And so there are some tools out there that are that people have built to see where you rank in AI. I don't know how good those tools are yet. Maybe somebody here does. I think HubSpot might have launched one, but there's some independent tools out there. But I think, it's a great way to just ask your team. It's a great exercise actually for your whole team, just to say, hey, when you go to ChatGPT and you ask it about our topic, what are they coming up with? And that's really useful. So understanding what it is, and that'll also help you hone what questions you're asking, right? And thinking about that. Okay, and then how many are any of you familiar with Marcus Sheridan? So Marcus Sheridan is a guy who wrote a book years ago in 2009 called They Ask, You Answer. And it was basically, he owned a pool company. He owned a company called River Pools, and he did really well in that company because he created content on his website that just answered every question that customers had. Customers would call and they'd say, what's the difference between a fiberglass pool and a whatever pool? And what's the difference between this and this? And why are you better than this company? And he took everything and he created content around all of that. They ask, you answer. And it's really effective. And I think that framework is still really useful, but it's a little bit different in how it works. In the old days, it was you put it on your website and then Google ranked it and then you hope people came. And today it's they ask and then they ask AI, and you win if AI has your answer in it. And so Marcus has figured out that this frame really works, but video becomes really, really important for that, YouTube in particular. And so obsessing over your audience questions and answering them better than anybody else can. Like that's kind of the way to think about it, and the headspace about it. Oh, Susan says used to work with River Pools. That's so awesome. And I love the Pool and Hot Tub Association. So somebody asks, Erica, should Vimeo also be in the mix? Vimeo is a great platform to host videos that are going to be in your website or somewhere else, but Vimeo is not crawled by AI engines the way YouTube is. So I think no, you don't need to be doing something on video for this on Vimeo. So Vimeo again is totally fine and usable, like Wistia or Brightcove or any other platform that you use to host video content, but it's not a place that you need to be putting your content in order for it to get ingested by the AI. Okay, I am almost at the end of my stuff. So the new YouTube playbook, a few things to remember. AI is the new search middleman. middle bot, reducing clicks so that you can, um, that again, people think that because the AI can talk like a person or chat in sentences that it is somehow more authoritative. People, there's all this research coming out where people just accept what the AI says. And so I think the stakes are really higher in a way to get in there with the right content than it was just simply getting into YouTube search. YouTube's important. It is number one. Again, if it's not number one, it's number two. If it's not number two, it's number three. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be very valuable for a very long time. So regardless of how these things change, if you have an effective YouTube strategy, you're going to make a good decision. It's not about views. So changing your organizations and your leadership's thought about why you're making this effort becomes important here, right? Because you don't want to be judged on the same criteria as the old days if you're doing this new program. So think library, more library, less broadcast. And then distribute the creation. And this is what I do all day at Gather Voices. It just is all about, how do we make it easier to get a lot of content by getting other people to talk about it. And the language and the perspective, the reason to ask 10 endodontists about root canals is they're going to use slightly different language. They're going to have slightly different perspective. They're going to answer the question a little bit differently. Like all of that together becomes really powerful and authoritative. And so I think, going out to your community and thinking about what are those top questions that your community asks that you don't yet have on video, and then going to do it. So that is it for me. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry about my little technical challenge. And feel free to ask questions. And if you want to email me, if you want slides, I'm happy to share with those with you.